What's up, guys? Phil Daru back again with another Ask Daru Q&A. It's going to be a two-part series. This is going to be the first part we're going to go through because I got a lot of good questions from everybody on social media, so I want to make sure that I'm answering them all. So here we go. Alright, so for BJJ practitioners, primarily I want to make sure that they're strong in close quarters. You have anti-rotation strength, so you're based out, you have good transverse abdominal strength, and then we also want to work on the posterior chain to eliminate those imbalances from just the tightness of the anterior chain, primarily in the psoas and the hip flexors. So from a strength perspective, I want to work on that posterior chain, so we're going to do some type of deadlift or RDL. We also are going to do some type of glute ham raise or even a kettlebell swing to work on the muscles of the posterior chain. And that means the upper back, lower back, mid back, glutes, and hamstrings. For the anterior chain, however, we also want to work on, I like to do the glute bridge dumbbell floor press like you've seen in my videos if you ever watched any of my past videos either on Instagram or on YouTube. But I also like to bring the dumbbells together and keeping those elbows nice and tight so you can work on your shrimp or your bridge and roll. After that, we also want to work on hanging leg raises so we can work on those hip flexors and those psoas muscles so they can be strong in the guard. Another thing I want to work on is tibialis, or the muscles in the front part of your shins, because let's face it, if I'm going to use my feet and I want to make sure that I have a good guard and I'm pulling and working different types of guards, I want to make sure that I have the muscles to do so. So doing a lot of toe raises and calf raises do help with that. After that, either anti-rotation, so that could be something like a payload press or a plank or a side plank. And then from a contralateral stabilization standpoint, something like a bear crawl, bird dog, or a dead bug to help with that, the ability to stay based out in someone's guard. For your grip strength, however, I want to also work on farmer's carries. All right, I want to make sure that I have good, solid grip strength because let's face it, if I don't have good grip strength, I'm not going to be able to hold on to the lapel if you're a gi practitioner, or arm drags, snap downs, things like that. You want to make sure that you have good strength there in the upper body and in the grips. So I'm going to be doing either farmer's carries, dead hang pulls, or dead hang pull-ups with or without the gi. And you can do this over time. I like to do it primarily either 30 to 60 seconds in an isometric fashion. Okay. We also want to work on, from a conditioning standpoint, I'm trying to work on anaerobic threshold, and I also want to work on lactic conditioning. So I like to do airdyne intervals, either an airdyne or a Versa climber, for those intervals of up to 10 to 12 seconds, maintaining that anaerobic response. Then as far as your circuits go, you want to make sure that when you're doing your circuits, you're implementing some isometrics and some grip strength work. So for me, I'll do stations lasting from 30 to 60 seconds from a 5 to 10 minute duration, however long you're training for a tournament or wherever you're trying to accomplish in a competition. So that's what I like to do. I hope that answers your question. Thanks again. So for this, primarily I would work off a conjugate method that I formulated for my athletes that do take fights on short notice. So for me, my conjugate method, primarily, let me back up and say, conjugate method was made popularized by Westside Barbell, Louis Simmons, where he utilizes a 3-week pendulum wave consisting of a dynamic effort, a max effort, and a repetition method effort each week to maximize, one, the ability to stay strong throughout all year long, so when they go to meets, they're ready to perform, and also so that you eliminate the law of accommodation or the staleness of a training, to also mitigate any type of injuries that may happen due to overuse in training. Now, not to say that this is highly beneficial for all athletes, for all situations. This is something that you can utilize for a certain situation that you may have, especially for fighters that are fighting, all year round, that may not know when they're going to fight, that take fights on short notice. So this is what I primarily would do. So for my training weeks are still 3-week pendulum waves. We're going to maintain that same exercise selection so that we can see exactly where we're progressing from. But week 1 is going to be something of a squat, a push, and a hip hinge. This is going to be 2 sets of singles on a max effort day. We're going to utilize accessory work that are going to enhance those abilities to be a better fighter. So posterior chain strength and other anti-rotation and punching power. So pressing and pulling are going to be something that we utilize a lot. Just depending on what we're working on is what we're going to do in our accessories. So after that, on the next day, so day 2, is going to be a squat, a push, and a hinge again, but now we're working dynamic effort, so we'll be doing 50% of 8 sets of 2. So it's going to be primarily very fast, all right? Every concentric motion that you're going to be doing, you're trying to elicit as much high velocity as possible, right? We're also going to be doing accessory work on that posterior chain because at the end of the day, they are throwing punches and kicks in the anterior chain so much. We want to make sure that we are lessening those imbalances. Okay. Now on Saturdays or at the end of the week or day 3 for anybody else, I do primarily just higher volume to help with just recovery, not to build muscle, but to get blood flow, to help with mobility, and to reduce the risk of injury and also the risk of overtraining. Okay, so after that Saturday or after that first week, you're going to go ahead and steadily increase with 5% on your dynamic day because I want them to be fast, I want them to be explosive so that if they do get the call for a fight, they're ready to go and have that ability to be powerful, for those rounds that they're fighting. Within those 2 days that you're training, you always want to work some explosive power work. So it's going to be 50% to 60% of max effort, or from an RPE standpoint, a 5 to 6 or 7 at the most. Very lightweight. We're going to be doing ball throws and box jumps, something that's going to be very low in load, but highly intense and highly fast. So we're trying to develop speed under light loads to elicit explosive power. So we'll do that for 2 times a week. For how many times I have them, it's usually 2 or 3 times a week. So I have to maximize my time, especially if they're fighting on short notice. So primarily, this is what it's going to look like. On day 1, it's going to be a max effort day, somewhere around 90% for 2 to 3 sets of 1 to 2 reps. The next day, day 2, is going to be a dynamic effort day. So you're going to be working on high velocities. So these are going to be a little bit more sets, but obviously low reps. So something like 8 to 10 sets with 1 to 3 repetitions. The load, however, is going to be very low. So it's going to be 50 to 60%. You can utilize bands, and if you do utilize bands, I would say do 20% band tension, and then the rest work with the weight. After that, on the 3rd day, if you have a 3rd day, I would definitely work on some repetition work, some cleanup work, if you would say, auxiliary lifts to help with imbalances and to help that recovery process. I hope that answers your question. Thanks. Yeah, so I do believe within the past 5 years, we've had made increases in strength and conditioning just because new and more professionals are coming into the sport. They're understanding the sport. They're understanding the bioenergetic demands, the strength adaptations that are needed to enhance an athlete or a fighter's performance. I think the old days of doing circuit training till you puke, throwing shit against the wall, trying to make it stick, and just working harder and harder and harder without any real periodization or program scheduled system in place. I think that we've understand that now, and we're making strides in the right direction with the introduction or the new places like the UFC Performance Institute and our own Fight Science Institute. I think that we are coming up with statistical data to actually show what we need to improve upon from an overall spectrum of the sport. So yeah, if you do not adapt to the times, the old school guys, I guess you would say, quote unquote, If they want to keep on in that same mentality, they're going to miss the boat, and they're going to miss out on a lot of good opportunity to get better. The younger guys coming up that's, started in MMA and now that it's mainstream, they understand that they have to treat this like a true profession and a true sport. So that's why I think that they have the upper hand when it comes to that, unless the old school guy can adapt to the situation. But like I said, we're making strides in the right direction as always, and I'm glad that I'm seeing new professionals actually come into the sport and treat it like a profession. So thanks for your question, buddy. So yes, in my experience, I do believe that a full body split or routine is going to be more ideal for a grappler or a combat sport athlete. Due to the fact that you have very limited time in strength and conditioning, you're working all other aspects of your skills. So you want to make sure you're maximizing your time efficiency inside the gym. And let's face it, if you're grappling, if you're doing any type of combat sport, you're working with your entire body. So we have to train like we're working our entire body, just like we are in a fight or in a tournament match, whatever the case may be. So a lot of posterior chain work, a lot of compound movements, a lot of anti-rotation and core stability strength, and then grip strength are going to be key. Do this 3 times a week. Limit it to about 60 to 90 minutes tops, because you want to make sure you're maximizing that time. You're getting the highest intensity output, but you're also making sure that you're getting out of there so you can recover properly to get that super compensation effect and not get overtrained. So that's primarily what I would focus on, is a full body routine. You can do something with a squat, a hip hinge, a push, a pull, and some sort of carry and core work. That right there will help you take your game to the next level, help you increase strength and power, and you'll be able to do your sport as efficiently as possible and not be tired and sore. Thanks for your question. Yeah, so this is an important question, because with strength and conditioning, especially in combat sports, if you do not have the proper means to auto-regulate and have structured deloads, you're probably going to run your fighter into the ground due to the fact that they train multiple times throughout the days and throughout the weeks. So this is a constant struggle with the strength and conditioning coach, to make sure that they're actually progressing going further in camp. So you have 2 ways of doing this. You have subjective indicators and you have objective indicators. Now, the objective indicators are obviously going to be more beneficial and more accurate. So what I like to utilize is a dynamometer in the morning to measure out grip strength. It's very easy to do. The fighter is not apt to not doing it. He actually doesn't mind it from my experiences. And what that does is, if they have lesser grip strength in the morning, that's usually an indicator of them being overtrained and not having the right amount of strength to do the training. Another thing that you can utilize is heart rate variability, or HRV monitor. I like Omega Wave. Some can use Bioforce. There's many other tools that you can use for an HRV monitor, but what it does is it measures out the variances of your heart rate to show if you are in a parasympathetic or sympathetic state. Basically stating, are you ready to go or not ready to go? If your cortisol is high and your stress levels are high, you're not going to give the most amount that you need to get what you need out of that situation or that training session. So we want to make sure that we're measuring out that, making sure that they're in a parasympathetic state, they're ready to go, they're not overstressed, and heart rate variability will help you do that. A subjective indicators now, this is something that you can do on the side, or when you get into training, you can see how well they're moving from their coordination. If their coordination is off, if their eye-hand coordination is off, if their balance is off, that's usually a good indicator of them not being 100% and probably being overreached or overtrained. Ask questions. How well did you sleep that night? Are you getting up feeling tired? Are you sleeping throughout the night? Are you feeling hungry? Are you not hungry at all? Things like that. Also ask them, how many times did they train that day or that week? How well did training go? Do they feel tired? Do they feel sluggish? Do they feel weak? Things like that. Asking questions are going to be a key thing, and that's something that you can utilize once you are more comfortable with the fighter. And that's something that the fighter will be comfortable with talking to you about, because he trusts in you and their buy-in is important. So you want to make sure that you're constantly asking questions along that way. Hope that answers your question. Thanks again.